The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital hummed their eternal song at 11:47 p.m. Rachel Thorne moved through the emergency room like a shadow. Her shoulders hunched forward as if bracing against an invisible wind. Her scrubs hung loose on her frame. Her hands trembled as she restocked the supply cart, organizing bandages with meticulous care that no one would notice or appreciate. 3 months. She had been here 3 months.
What are the
and still
vitals?
They looked through her
Pulse
like
is
she was made
110,
of
pressure is
glass.
90/60.
The night
Got
shift
it.
suited
Trauma
her.
1 is ready.
Fewer people, less noise. The darkness outside the windows felt safer than daylight somehow. She kept her eyes down, her voice soft, her presence minimal. That was the deal she had made with herself 2 years ago. Stay invisible. Stay forgotten. Stay alive. A burst of laughter erupted from the nurses' station. Rachel glanced up briefly. 3 young nurses clustered around a computer screen, scrolling through something on their phones. One of them, Bryn Ashford, caught Rachel's eye and offered a small, apologetic smile. Rachel looked away quickly. The others didn't smile. Charge nurse Patricia Lawson stood at the station reviewing charts with the kind of theatrical authority that came from 20 years of hospital politics. She was 42, efficient, and had decided within Rachel's first week that the new night nurse was dead weight. "Thorne," Patricia called without looking up. "The supply closet in Trauma 2 needs reorganizing. Should have been done last shift." Rachel set down the bandage she was holding. "Yes, ma'am. And after that, biohazard containers need emptying." "Yes, ma'am." Patricia finally looked at her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You're slow, Thorne. Everything takes you twice as long as it should. I don't know what they were thinking hiring someone so timid for emergency medicine." Rachel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll work faster, ma'am." "See that you do." Rachel walked toward Trauma 2, her footsteps silent on the linoleum. Behind her, she heard one of the younger nurses whisper to another. The words carried farther than they thought. "She's so weird. Never talks to anyone." "Did you see her hands shake during that code last week? I thought she was going to drop the crash cart." "Patricia says she's a liability. Probably shouldn't even be in trauma." Rachel pushed through the door to Trauma 2 and closed it behind her. The room was empty. Quiet. She stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, deliberately. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way she'd been taught a lifetime ago. Her hands stopped trembling. In high-stress moments they never did. Only in the quiet times. Only when the adrenaline faded and memory filled the void. She began organizing the supply closet with mechanical precision. Gauze pads sorted by size, IV supplies arranged by gauge, trauma shears hung exactly where they should be. Her movements were economical practiced muscle memory from another life, a life she had left behind, a life that wouldn't leave her. The emergency room scanner crackled to life outside. Rachel paused, listening. "Mercy General, this is Med 12. We're inbound with multiple trauma from an MVA. 8-vehicle pileup on the interstate. We've got at least 15 casualties. First ambulance arriving in 3 minutes. Prepare for mass casualty protocol." Rachel heard the controlled chaos beginning outside. Footsteps running, voices rising, the high-pitched beep of monitors being wheeled into position. She stayed in the supply closet, hands steady on a box of chest tubes, waiting. The doors burst open. "We need all hands! Now Thorne, get out here!" Rachel emerged from the supply closet. The ER had transformed in seconds. Every bay was being prepped. Residents were gowning up, nurses were pulling crash carts. The controlled environment of 30 seconds ago had become organized pandemonium. Patricia jabbed a finger at Rachel. "You're on triage. Check vitals tag and move them. Can you handle that without freezing up?" "Yes, ma'am." The first ambulance arrived with sirens screaming. The paramedics wheeled in a middle-aged woman with a compound fracture of the femur. Blood soaked through the temporary dressing. Rachel moved to her side, immediately checking pulses, noting pupil response. "Vitals?" she asked the paramedic. "BP 90/60, heart rate 110, GCS 14. Rachel tagged her yellow. "Urgent, but stable." "Bay 3, she directed. The second ambulance brought a teenage boy with facial lacerations and a possible concussion. Green tag. Bay 5. The third brought an elderly man in respiratory distress. Chest trauma. Rachel's eyes tracked the rise and fall of his chest, the cyanosis creeping into his lips. Red tag. Immediate. Bay 1. She worked through 6 patients in 15 minutes. Her voice remained soft, but her hands moved with quiet confidence. She saw things the residents missed, a subtle change in breathing pattern, the way someone favored their left side, the 1,000 small signs that separated stable from critical. No one noticed. They were too busy being competent loudly. The 7th ambulance rolled in at 12:03 a.m. 2 paramedics wheeled in a man on a backboard moving fast. Rachel caught the edge of their conversation as they passed. 34-year-old male construction worker, driver's side T-bone collision, restrained, complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath. Michael Garrett was conscious, alert, and terrified. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool air. His right hand clutched at his chest. His breathing came in short, shallow gasps. "Get him to Trauma 1, Patricia ordered. "Hayes, he's yours." Dr. Brandon Hayes was 33 years old and carried his medical degree like a badge of honor. He'd graduated from Johns Hopkins, completed his residency at Mass General, and never let anyone forget it. He approached Garrett's gurney with the casual confidence of someone who'd seen 1,000 chest traumas and expected to see 1,000 more. Rachel stood at the supply station nearby, pulling together a basic trauma kit. Her eyes tracked Hayes as he examined Garrett. Hayes pulled out his stethoscope, listened to Garrett's chest for approximately 8 seconds, then straightened. "Seatbelt bruising," he announced to the room. "Classic presentation. Chest wall contusion from the restraint during impact. Nothing's broken. Pain management and observation. Let's move him to the holding area and make room for the critical cases." Rachel's hands stopped moving. She looked at Garrett, really looked at him. His breathing was shallow, yes, but it was more than that. The right side of his chest barely moved at all, while the left side rose and fell normally. The asymmetry was subtle but unmistakable. And his neck, the veins were distended and gorged with blood that had nowhere to go. His skin had a greyish tint that had nothing to do with fear. She stepped closer to the gurney. Hayes was already writing orders on his tablet. 2 milligrams morphine IV, chest X-ray when we have time. Transfer to Dr. Hayes. Rachel's voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. He didn't look up. "Not now, Thorne." "Doctor, I don't think we should move him." Now Hayes looked up, irritation flickering across his face. "Excuse me." Rachel stood at the foot of the gurney, hands clasped in front of her. Her posture screamed deference, but her eyes were different, focused, sharp, seeing things that Hayes had missed. "His trachea is deviated to the left," she said softly, "and his jugular veins are distended. The right side of his chest isn't expanding properly." Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, just dismissive, the kind of laugh reserved for children who say something adorably wrong. "Thorne, are you seriously trying to diagnose my patient right now? I just think, you're a nurse, a new nurse. You don't diagnose. You don't question. You follow orders. Is that clear?" Rachel's hands tightened slightly. "Yes, doctor. But if I could just... One more word and you're written up. Do you understand?" Patricia appeared at Hayes' elbow, her face tight with disapproval. "Thorne, this is completely inappropriate. Dr. Hayes is a board-certified emergency physician. You stock supplies and change bedpans. Know your place." Rachel looked at Garrett. His eyes met hers, wide with fear and pain. She could see it in his face. He knew something was wrong. His body was screaming at him that something was very, very wrong. She opened her mouth. Hayes cut her off. "Thorne, I'm ordering you to step away from my patient, right now." Rachel took one step back, then another. Her hands fell to her sides. Hayes turned to a nurse. "Get him prepped for transfer to holding. Keep him on monitors, but he's not critical." Rachel stood at the supply station 10 feet away and watched. Her body was still. Her face showed nothing, but every muscle was coiled tight, ready. She counted the seconds. 90 seconds passed. Garrett's breathing became more labored. 120 seconds. His oxygen saturation began to drop. 94%. 92. Hayes was across the room now, dealing with another patient. A nurse was preparing to wheel Garrett's gurney toward the holding area. 150 seconds. Garrett's lips were turning blue. Rachel's hand moved to the supply cart beside her. Her fingers found a 14-gauge angio catheter without looking. She palmed it, hiding it against her wrist. 170 seconds. The monitor beside Garrett's bed began to alarm. The oxygen saturation had dropped to 88%. His heart rate spiked to 140. The nurse pushing his gurney stopped. Dr. Hayes, his sats are dropping." Hayes looked up from across the room, annoyed. "Increase his oxygen." "He's probably just anxious." 180 seconds. The monitor's alarm changed pitch. Higher, more urgent, and then everything happened at once. Garrett's eyes rolled back. His body went rigid. The monitor screamed as his heart rate skyrocketed and then plummeted. The oxygen saturation dropped to 70%, 60, 50. He's coding, someone shouted. Hayes ran across the ER, his face suddenly pale. Get the crash cart! Someone start compressions! A resident jumped onto the gurney, positioning his hands over Garrett's sternum. He began compressions, fast, uncoordinated, panicked. Hayes grabbed a laryngoscope. We need to intubate. Someone get me, where's the... He's crashing, Patricia shouted. Blood pressure's 60/40. Push EP. Get me the defibrillator. Controlled chaos had become uncontrolled. Hands grabbed for equipment. Voices overlapped. Orders were shouted and countermanded. The resident doing compressions was sweating, his rhythm deteriorating with each passing second. Rachel watched the monitor. Garrett's heart rate was erratic. Ventricular tachycardia. Not enough perfusion to his brain. Not enough oxygen to his organs. The compressions weren't helping because they couldn't fix what was actually wrong. She looked at Garrett's chest. The right side was completely still now, not moving at all. The left side rose and fell with each compression, but the right remained frozen, trapped. Tension pneumothorax. Air had leaked from Garrett's damaged lung into the pleural space. With nowhere to go, it was building pressure, pushing against his lung, collapsing it, shifting his mediastinum, compressing his heart. Every second that passed, more air built up, more pressure, more damage, and no amount of compressions or drugs or intubation would fix it. Only one thing would. Rachel's decision took less time than a heartbeat. She moved. Not fast, not dramatically, just inevitable. Like water flowing downhill. She crossed the 10 feet to Garrett's gurney in 3 strides. Her hand still held the angiocatheter. The other hand reached for Garrett's gown and tore it open, exposing his chest. What are you? Hayes started. Rachel didn't look at him. Her fingers found the second intercostal space on Garrett's right side, just lateral to the sternum. The spot between the ribs where the pressure had built to lethal levels. Where death was waiting. She positioned the needle at a 90-degree angle to the chest wall. No hesitation. No doubt. Just muscle memory from procedures performed under conditions these people couldn't imagine. She pushed the needle through skin, through muscle, through intercostal tissue, into the pleural space. For 1 heartbeat, nothing happened. Then came the sound. Hiss! Air rushed out of the needle in a violent exhale, the built-up pressure releasing all at once. The sound filled the trauma bay like a deflating tire, like a punctured balloon, like life itself escaping and returning in the same breath. Garrett's chest moved. The right side, frozen and still for 3 minutes, suddenly expanded. Drew breath. Moved in rhythm with the left. The monitor's alarm changed pitch. The heart rate stabilized. Climbed. Settled into a normal sinus rhythm. The oxygen saturation ticked upward. 60, 70, 85, 92. Garrett gasped. A real breath. His first real breath in 3 minutes. His eyes opened. He was alive. The trauma bay fell silent. Rachel stood beside the gurney, the angiocatheter still in her hand, a small trickle of blood running down Garrett's chest. She pulled off her gloves in one smooth motion and dropped them in the biohazard bin. 10 people stared at her. She stared at nothing. Hayes's face had gone from pale to red. His hands were shaking, not from fear now, from rage. What the hell did you just do? Rachel's voice was steady, quiet. Needle decompression. He had a tension pneumothorax. The air was compressing his heart and great vessels. He would have died in approximately 2 minutes without intervention. You performed a procedure, an invasive procedure, without authorization, without orders, without... He was dying. That's not your call to make. You're a nurse, Thorne. You don't make those calls. You don't perform procedures. You don't... Patricia stepped forward, her face a mask of professional fury. This is gross insubordination. This is assault, technically. You just stabbed a patient. I saved a patient, Rachel said softly. You violated every protocol in this hospital. Hayes's voice was getting louder. You performed a medical procedure you are not licensed to perform in this facility. Do you have any idea what you've done? Rachel looked at Garrett. His color was returning. His breathing was steady. The monitor showed stable vital signs. He would live. He would go home to whatever family was waiting for him. He would see tomorrow. That was all that mattered. Yes, doctor, she said. I know exactly what I've done. Hayes turned to Patricia. Get security. I want her escorted out immediately. And call Administrator Lancaster. This is termination. Effective immediately. Patricia pulled out her radio. Security to Trauma 1, immediately. Rachel didn't move, didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She simply stood there, hands at her sides, watching Garrett breathe. A young resident approached Garrett's bed, checking his vitals with shaking hands. He's stable. BP's 110/70. Sats are 94% on room air. She saved his life. That's not the point, Hayes shouted. But it was the point. It was the only point that mattered. 2 security guards arrived. Young men with uncertain expressions who clearly had no idea what they were walking into. Escort Miss Thorne to the locker room, Patricia ordered. She's to collect her belongings and leave the premises immediately. Rachel walked between the security guards without resistance. As she passed Bryn Ashford, the young nurse reached out and touched her arm briefly. That was incredible, Bryn whispered. Rachel said nothing. They walked through the ER in silence. Staff members stopped what they were doing to watch. Whispers followed in Rachel's wake. Did she just get fired? She saved that guy's life. Hayes is furious. Who is she? The locker room was empty. The security guards waited outside while Rachel gathered her things. She didn't have much. A change of clothes, a water bottle, a small photo in her locker that she'd kept face down for 3 months. She picked up the photo now and looked at it. 7 people in desert camouflage faces smeared with dust and exhaustion, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling despite everything, or maybe because of everything. Rachel's finger traced one face in particular, a young man with sandy hair and an easy grin. His name tape read, Holloway. I'm sorry, Marcus, she whispered to the photograph. I really tried to be someone else. She slipped the photo into her bag and closed the locker. When she emerged, the security guards walked her to the employee exit. It was 1:15 a.m. The parking lot was mostly empty. Sodium vapor lights cast everything in shades of orange and black. For what it's worth, one of the guards said quietly. My cousin's a paramedic. He says what you did was textbook. Don't know why they're making such a big deal. Rachel offered him a small smile. Hospital politics. Don't worry about it. She walked to her car, an old Honda Civic with 200,000 miles and a temperamental starter. She sat in the driver's seat but didn't turn the key, just sat there in the darkness breathing. Her phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. We need to talk. It's important. Please call me back. Commander Preston. Rachel deleted the message without reading it twice. She'd deleted 17 messages from Commander Preston over the last 6 months, blocked his number 3 times. He kept finding new ways to reach her. She wasn't that person anymore. She couldn't be. The drive home took 20 minutes through empty streets. Rachel lived in a small apartment complex on the edge of town. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 700 square feet of carefully maintained anonymity. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and unlocked her door. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Sparse, clean, almost aggressively neutral. No decorations on the walls. No photos on the shelves. Nothing personal except a single framed picture on her nightstand face down. Rachel dropped her bag by the door and went through her nightly routine with mechanical precision. Check the door locks, check the window locks, check the fire escape. Old habits from another life. Habits that kept her alive then and felt necessary now even though the wars she fought these days were different. She changed into workout clothes and dropped to the floor. 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, 50 burpees. The same routine she'd done every night for 7 years. Her body moved through the exercises with practiced efficiency, not because she needed to stay in shape, but because the routine kept the nightmares at bay. Sometimes. At 2:30 a.m., she finally allowed herself to lie down. She picked up the photo on her nightstand and turned it over. The same desert photograph from her locker. 7 warriors. 1 family. 3 of them were dead now. Marcus. Killed in action, Afghanistan, 2019. Rodriguez. Suicide, 2020. And Jackson. Car accident, 2021. Though Rachel suspected it hadn't been an accident. War had a way of taking people even after they came home. Rachel set the photo down and closed her eyes. Sleep came reluctantly, bringing with it the same dream it always did. She was 22 years old again. The Afghan sun was merciless overhead. They were clearing a compound that intelligence said was abandoned. Intelligence was wrong. The explosion came from the east. RPG. It took out their point man instantly and scattered the rest of the team. Rachel hit the ground hard, ears ringing, tasting blood and dust. Corpsman up! Corpsman up! She was moving before the echo faded, running toward the voice. Marcus was down 30 yards away, clutching his neck. Blood poured between his fingers. Arterial spray painted the sand red. Rachel slid to her knees beside him, hands already reaching for her aid bag. Stay with me, Marcus. Look at me. Stay with me. She packed the wound with gauze, Applied pressure. His blood was so warm, so red, so much of it. "Not your fault, Doc," Marcus whispered. His voice was getting weaker. "You did everything." "Don't you dare," Rachel said. Her hands were covered in his blood. "Don't you dare leave me. Tell my mom. Tell her yourself. You're going to be fine. You're going to—" Marcus's eyes fixed on something past her shoulder, something she couldn't see. And then they didn't see anything at all. Rachel woke with a gasp, sitting upright in bed. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from memory. She looked at her palms in the darkness. They were clean. No blood. That had been 7 years ago. 7 years, and she still felt it. She got out of bed and went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, stared at her reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back was older than 29, haunted, tired. "You couldn't save him," she told her reflection, "but you saved Michael Garrett tonight. That has to count for something." Her reflection didn't look convinced. Rachel returned to bed but didn't sleep. She lay there watching the ceiling fan rotate slowly overhead, counting the revolutions until the first grey light of dawn crept through the blinds. At 6:30 a.m., after a sleepless night watching the ceiling fan rotate, Rachel's phone rang. She looked at the screen. "Lancaster David, hospital administrator," Rachel answered. "Hello? Miss Thorne, I need you to come to my office this morning, 9 a.m. We need to discuss last night's incident." "Yes, sir." "Bring your employee ID and any hospital property you may have. This will be a formal termination meeting." "I understand, sir." The call ended. Rachel set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Fired, officially fired, for saving a man's life. There was a bitter irony in that. She showered, dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a plain grey t-shirt, and drove back to Mercy General. The morning sun was bright and cold. The parking lot was filling up with the day shift. People heading in to start their work. Normal people with normal jobs who went home to normal lives. Rachel had never been normal. She walked through the hospital's main entrance. A few staff members recognized her and quickly looked away. Word had spread. She was the nurse who'd been fired. The one who'd caused all that trouble. Administrator Lancaster's office was on the 3rd floor. Rachel took the stairs. His secretary, a woman named Judith, who'd always been kind, offered her a sad smile. "He's ready for you, honey. I'm sorry about all this." Rachel nodded and entered the office. David Lancaster was 48 years old with an MBA from Wharton and a wardrobe that cost more than Rachel made in 3 months. He sat behind his massive desk, surrounded by framed certificates and awards that proclaimed his administrative excellence. He did not ask her to sit. "Miss Thorne, I'll make this brief. Last night you performed an invasive medical procedure without authorization, without physician supervision, and without regard for hospital protocol. Dr. Hayes has filed a formal complaint. Charge Nurse Lawson has corroborated his account. Security footage confirms your actions." Rachel stood at attention, hands clasped behind her back. Old habits. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" "The patient would have died without immediate intervention, sir. That's not for you to determine. You're a registered nurse, not a physician. You're not qualified to make that diagnosis or perform that procedure in this facility." "I'm qualified, sir. I've performed that procedure 47 times in combat situations. My success rate is 100%. Lancaster's eyebrows rose slightly. "Combat situations?" "Yes, sir." He opened a file on his desk. Rachel's personnel file. He flipped through pages, frowning. "Your resume lists your previous employment as Federal Government Service 2016 to 2020. No specifics. Your references are all from a Commander Preston at an address in Virginia Beach. Naval Special Warfare Command." He looked up at her. Really looked at her for the first time. "What exactly did you do in the military, Miss Thorne?" "I was a corpsman, sir." "A corpsman?" "Yes, sir." Lancaster stared at her for a long moment. Then he closed the file. "I don't doubt your technical skills, Miss Thorne, but this is a civilian hospital. We have protocols, regulations, liability concerns. What you did last night, however well-intentioned, opened this hospital to massive legal exposure. If that patient had died—" "He didn't die, sir, but he could have. And then we'd be facing a wrongful death lawsuit that would bankrupt us. I can't have nurses, even highly skilled ones, making independent medical decisions. I'm sorry, but I have no choice. Your employment is terminated effective immediately." He slid a folder across the desk. "Your final paycheck. Cobra information. Exit paperwork. Security will escort you out." Rachel picked up the folder. "Yes, sir." She turned to leave. "Miss Thorne." She stopped. Lancaster's expression had softened slightly. "For what it's worth, Michael Garrett is going to make a full recovery. His family wanted me to thank whoever saved his life. So, Thank you. Off the record. Rachel nodded once and left. The walk back to the locker room felt longer this time. She gathered her few remaining possessions, the photo of her team, a spare set of scrubs, a stethoscope that had been a gift from someone whose name no longer mattered. As she packed, the locker room door opened. Bryn Ashford slipped inside, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "I'm not supposed to talk to you," Bryn said quickly. "But I had to say, what you did was amazing. I've never seen anything like it." "It was just training." "Where did you train? I mean, if you don't mind me asking. What kind of nurse learns to do that?" Rachel zipped her bag closed. "A different kind." Bryn stepped closer, lowering her voice. "There are rumors. Some of the older staff are saying you're military, that you were in combat. Is that true?" Rachel looked at the young nurse. She was 24, bright, earnest. She reminded Rachel of herself once upon a time, before Afghanistan, before Marcus, before everything turned to ash. "It was a long time ago," Rachel said quietly. "Different person, different life." "But you saved lives. That's the same, isn't it? Whether it's here or wherever you were." Rachel slung her bag over her shoulder. "It should be, but apparently it's not." She walked out of the locker room for the last time. No security guards escorted her this time. She simply walked through the ER, past the nurses' station, past Trauma 1, where Michael Garrett had almost died 12 hours ago. Colonel James Whitmore was in the hallway. The elderly veteran was scheduled for discharge today. He stood near the nurses' station in a hospital gown and slippers, watching Rachel approach. As she passed, he straightened to attention as much as his 67-year-old frame would allow and offered her a crisp salute. Rachel stopped. Her body responded before her mind could catch up. Her right hand snapped up in a return salute. Sharp, precise, military. Every nurse at the station turned to stare. "Corpsman up, young lady," Whitmore said quietly. "Wherever you go, whatever you do." "Corpsman up." Rachel's hand dropped. "Thank you, sir." She continued walking, but something had shifted. For 3 months, she'd been invisible. For 3 months, she'd hidden who she was, what she'd been, what she could do. And in one night, one moment, one decision, all of that had shattered. Rachel pushed through the exit doors into the parking lot. The morning sun was fully up now, bright and cold. She walked to her car and sat in the driver's seat. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number." "Rachel, this is Commander Preston. I know you don't want to talk to me, but we have a situation. Lieutenant Kieran Reeves has been hit. It's bad. He's asking for you. Only you. We need Valkyrie. Helicopter inbound to your location. ETA 20 minutes. Rachel stared at the message for a long time. Kieran Reeves. She hadn't heard that name in 2 years. He'd been on her team, one of the younger SEALs, 25 when she left. Good kid, fast learner. He'd been there the day Marcus died. Had helped her carry Marcus's body back to the extraction point. 20 minutes to decide whether to resurrect a life she'd buried 2 years ago. She looked at the photo of Marcus in her bag. She made the call. "I'm retired, Commander." Preston's voice was rough with exhaustion. "I know, but Kieran's not. And he's dying. Gunshot wounds to the abdomen, shrapnel near his aorta. He's being medevaced from Syria as we speak. But he won't let our medics touch him. He keeps saying he'll only let Valkyrie work on him. He trusts you. Only you." Rachel closed her eyes. "There are other medics. Better ones. I've been out for 2 years. My hands aren't—" "Your hands are the steadiest I've ever seen. And Kieran knows that. Rachel, please. I wouldn't ask if there was any other option." Silence stretched between them. "There's more," Preston continued. Kieran was carrying classified intel. Evidence of massive defense contract fraud. $2.8 billion. If he dies, the evidence chain breaks. The people responsible walk free, and they know it. Someone already tried to kill him in the staging area. This is bigger than one wounded SEAL. Rachel's jaw tightened. "You're telling me there's a target on his back?" "A big one, which is why I need the best combat medic I know. I need Valkyrie. Valkyrie's dead commander. No, she's just hiding. And it's time to stop hiding." Rachel looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The haunted eyes, the tired face, the woman who'd spent 2 years trying to be invisible. She thought about Marcus, about his last words, about the promise she'd made to keep going, keep saving people. She thought about Michael Garrett alive right now because she'd refused to stay invisible when it mattered. She thought about Kieran Reeves, 27 years old, bleeding out somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, asking for her with what might be his dying breath. "Where do you need me?" Rachel asked. She heard Preston exhale in relief. "I'm sending a helicopter to your location. Pack light. Combat ready." "Understood." The call ended. Rachel drove home quickly. She had 20 minutes to become someone she'd sworn she'd never be again. 20 minutes to resurrect Valkyrie. When she entered her apartment, she didn't waste time. She went to her bedroom closet and pushed aside the civilian clothes. In the back, wrapped in plastic and untouched for 2 years, was a duffel bag. Rachel unzipped it. Inside was everything she'd kept from her military life. Her dog tags, her aid bag fully stocked, a set of tactical pants and shirt, her boots worn and broken in, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, her challenge coin from SEAL Team 3. She pulled out the dog tags and slipped them over her head. The metal was cold against her skin. Thorn Rachel M. P.O.1. USN. She changed quickly. Tactical pants, black shirt, boots that felt like coming home. She repacked the aid bag, checking supplies with practiced efficiency. Hemostatic gauze, chest seals, tourniquets, IV supplies, everything she might need, everything she'd used 47 times before. Her phone buzzed. "Preston helicopter inbound. Parking lot behind your building. 5 minutes." Rachel shouldered her bag and took one last look at her apartment. The anonymous space she'd tried to make into a life. It had never worked. She'd been living in a holding pattern, waiting for something. Maybe this was it. She locked the door behind her and descended the stairs. Behind the apartment building was an empty lot used for overflow parking. In the distance she could hear the distinctive thump of helicopter rotors. A Sikorsky UH-60. Black Hawk appeared over the tree line. Not a medical helicopter, a military bird. Dark grey, no markings. It descended into the parking lot rotor wash, kicking up dust and debris. Rachel jogged toward it, her body falling into old patterns. Head down. Quick steps. The crew chief waved her aboard. She climbed in. 6 SEALs were already on board, geared up, weapons ready. They looked at her with recognition and relief. "Welcome back, Doc!" one of them shouted over the rotor noise. Rachel strapped in. The helicopter lifted immediately, banking hard to the east. She was going back. After 2 years of hiding, 2 years of trying to be someone else, Rachel Thorne was going back to being Valkyrie. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across a clear sky. The Black Hawk flew east through cloudless sky. Rachel sat, strapped in among 6 SEALs, her aid bag between her boots, her hands resting on her knees. The helicopter's vibration ran through her body like a familiar song she'd tried to forget. The crew chief, a young petty officer with a fresh face, leaned toward her and shouted over the rotor noise. "Ma'am, Commander Preston is on comms. He wants to brief you." Rachel accepted the headset and adjusted it over her ears. The rotor noise diminished, replaced by Preston's voice. "Valkyrie, do you copy?" She closed her eyes briefly at the call sign. 2 years since anyone had used it. "Copy, Commander. I'm here." "Good. We're 30 minutes out from Mercy General. The situation has escalated. Kieran's condition is critical but stable for now. The real problem is what happened 20 minutes ago." Rachel's jaw tightened. "What happened?" "Someone accessed his medical records at the staging facility in Germany. We caught it on our security sweep." They had his exact location, his transfer schedule, his incoming flight path. "We moved him to a secondary aircraft and changed the route, but Rachel, they knew where he was. They knew where he was going." "Inside access." "Has to be. The intel Kieran's carrying implicates defense contractors, Pentagon officials, maybe even congressional staffers. We're talking about a network that's been running fraud for over a decade, 2.8 billion in false contracts. They have the resources and the reach to get to him anywhere." Rachel looked out the helicopter's open door at the landscape rushing past below. Farmland giving way to suburbs, morning traffic on the highways like blood cells through arteries. "Which is why you're not taking him to a military hospital," she said. "Exactly. We're moving him to a secure location off the grid, somewhere they won't think to look." "Where?" "The old VIA hospital on 5th Street. The one the government's been trying to shut down for 3 years. It's technically closed, but the building's still intact. Colonel Whitmore and some of the old vets have been using it as an unofficial meeting place." Rachel remembered Whitmore's salute in the hospital corridor, his quiet recognition of what she was. "Can you trust him?" "He served in Somalia, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. If he says the building is secure, it's secure. And more importantly, it's the last place anyone would look for a high-value asset. No active records, no electronic systems, no paper trail." Rachel processed this quickly. "You're using the fact that everyone ignores veterans to hide one. Sometimes the best place to hide is where nobody bothers to look." The city was visible now through the helicopter's open door. Mercy General's distinctive tower rose above the surrounding buildings. Rachel could see the parking lot where she'd sat less than 2 hours ago processing her termination. How fast things changed. "What about the evidence Kieran's carrying?" she asked. "Encrypted drive embedded in his tactical vest. We've kept it with him. Can't risk separating it. The forensic chain of custody has to remain unbroken for it to hold up in court." "So wherever Kieran goes, the evidence goes. And whoever wants to destroy that evidence will come for him."
Which is why I need you on this, Rachel. Not just as a medic. I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who knows how to fight when the shooting starts.
Rachel was quiet for a moment. Through the headset, she could hear the helicopter's engines, the rush of wind, the muffled conversations of the SEALs around her. "Commander, I need to know something." "Go ahead." "Marcus, the ambush that killed him. You said it was leaked coordinates. Do you know who?" Preston's silence spoke volumes. "We have suspicions," he finally said. "Nothing we can prove yet, but Rachel, the same network that's after Kieran. Now we think they're connected to what happened to Marcus. The operation your team was running that day, it was supposed to interdict a weapons shipment. Turns out that shipment was part of a false flag operation to justify a new defense contract. Marcus and his team got close to exposing it." Rachel's hands tightened on her knees. "So they killed him." "They tried to kill all of you. You survived. Marcus didn't. And now Kieran's in the same position Marcus was. Evidence that could bring down an empire, a target on his back, and not enough people he can trust." The helicopter began to descend. Rachel could see Mercy General directly below now, the parking lot, the emergency room entrance where just hours ago she'd saved a man's life and lost her job for it. "Kieran was there," Rachel said quietly. "When Marcus died, he was on the extraction team." "He was. He helped you carry Marcus back. He knows what you went through, and he knows you did everything possible. That's why he trusts you. That's why he's asking for you now." The Black Hawk settled into a hover above the hospital parking lot. Staff members poured out of the building, some shielding their eyes from the rotor wash, others holding up phones to record the spectacle. "We're landing in 30 seconds, Preston said. "This is going to make a scene. That's intentional. I want everyone to know we're here for you. I want them to see what you really are." Rachel unbuckled her harness. "Commander, is that necessary?" "Yes, because after today, nobody's going to underestimate you again." The helicopter touched down with a gentle bump. The SEALs were already moving weapons held low, but ready securing a perimeter with practiced efficiency. Rachel grabbed her aid bag and jumped down. The rotor wash whipped her hair across her face. She walked toward the hospital entrance with 6 operators forming a loose formation around her. Hospital security guards stood at the doors, uncertain whether to intervene. One of them, recognizing Rachel from her employment just hours ago, raised his radio. We have a situation at the main entrance. Military helicopter, armed personnel, and that nurse we terminated this morning just walked in with them." Commander Dalton Preston emerged from the helicopter last. He was 43, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that came from 2 decades of warfare. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a tactical jacket, but everything about his bearing screamed military command. He walked directly to the security guards. "Where is your emergency room charge nurse, Patricia Lawson?" The guard stammered. She's on shift, but I can't just..." Preston pulled out credentials. "Federal identification. Naval Special Warfare Command." "Get her, now, and get your administrator. This is a matter of national security." The guard spoke urgently into his radio. Within 90 seconds, hospital staff began emerging. First the curious, then the concerned. Then Patricia Lawson herself, her face a mixture of confusion and anger. She saw Rachel standing among the SEALs, and her expression hardened. "What is the meaning of this? You can't just land a military helicopter in our parking lot and storm into a civilian hospital with weapons." Preston cut her off. "Where is Petty Officer First Class Rachel Thorne's supervisor? Where is Dr. Brandon Hayes?" Patricia blinked. "Petty Officer Rachel Thorne is a nurse, was a nurse. We terminated her employment this morning for..." "I know why you fired her. I also know who she really is. Get Dr. Hayes, get your administrator." "I'll explain this once." More staff had gathered now. Nurses, residents, even some patients in wheelchairs drawn by the commotion. Rachel stood perfectly still, her face neutral, while chaos swirled around her. Dr. Brandon Hayes pushed through the crowd. He saw Rachel and his face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous! You can't bring armed soldiers into my emergency room." "I don't care what federal credentials you have. This woman assaulted a patient last night and..." Preston stepped directly into Hayes' personal space. The doctor was tall, but Preston was taller, and there was something in Preston's eyes that made Hayes take an involuntary step backward. "The woman you fired," Preston said quietly, "is Petty Officer First Class Rachel M. Thorne. United States Navy.
She served 7 years with Naval Special Warfare Command as a combat medical technician attached to SEAL Team 3 and SEAL Team 8. She completed 4 combat deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. She has personally saved 47 lives under enemy fire. She holds 3 Navy Crosses for valor, 2 Silver Stars, and a Purple Heart. Her call sign is Valkyrie. The crowd had gone completely silent. Hayes stared.
That's impossible.
She's just a what?
Preston's voice was steel. A nurse? She is a nurse. The best combat trauma nurse in naval special warfare history. What she did to your patient last night, she's done it dozens of times in conditions you couldn't imagine. Under fire. In the dark. With wounded operators bleeding out around her. And she has a 100% success rate. Patricia had gone pale. We didn't know. Her file said Federal Service, but we thought, you thought wrong.
And your ignorance almost cost a good man his life.
Administrator David Lancaster arrived slightly out of breath. Commander, I'm David Lancaster, Hospital Administrator. Can we please discuss this in my office? We have patients who... No. Preston didn't raise his voice, but the word carried absolute authority. We're not discussing anything. I'm informing you. Petty Officer Thorne is being recalled to active duty as of this moment. She will not be returning to work here.
You fired one of the most decorated combat medics in the United States military for doing exactly what she was trained to do. For saving a life using skills most of your staff will never possess. He turned to address the gathered crowd. Rachel Thorne spent 3 months working in this hospital. 3 months being mocked, being given menial tasks, being treated like she was incompetent. And not once did she tell you who she really was.
Not once did she use her rank or her record to demand respect. She just did her job quietly and professionally, the way real professionals do. Bryn Ashford stood near the front of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Preston looked directly at Hayes. The patient she saved last night, Michael Garrett. He's going to live. He's going to go home to his wife and his 2 children.
Because Petty Officer Thorne recognized a tension pneumothorax and had the courage to act when you failed to diagnose it. If she hadn't intervened, Garrett would be dead right now, and you would be explaining to his family why your ego was more important than his life. Hayes opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. Preston turned to Rachel. Petty Officer Thorne, you're with us. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. Rachel nodded once. Yes, sir. She started to turn, then stopped. She looked at Hayes. Not with anger, not with triumph, just with the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly what she was worth. Dr. Hayes, she said softly, the next time someone tries to tell you something is wrong with your patient, listen to them. It doesn't matter if they're a nurse, a paramedic, or a janitor. If someone with experience is trying to warn you, there's probably a reason. Lives matter more than hierarchy. She turned to Patricia. Charge Nurse Lawson, you were right about one thing. I was slow. I took too long on tasks. That's because I was double-checking everything. In combat medicine, you learn that speed without accuracy kills people. I'd rather be slow and thorough than fast and wrong. Then Rachel walked through the crowd toward the helicopter. The SEALs formed up around her automatically, a protective detail that moved with choreographed precision. Colonel Whitmore stood near the emergency room entrance. He'd been released that morning and was still in the hospital lobby when the helicopter landed. As Rachel passed, he straightened to attention and saluted. Rachel stopped and returned the salute. Crisp. Perfect. Thank you, sir, she said. Whitmore smiled. No, young lady. Thank you for reminding these people that quiet doesn't mean weak, and that the ones who've seen real combat don't need to brag about it. Rachel nodded and continued to the helicopter. She climbed aboard and strapped in. Preston was last aboard, and as soon as his boots left the pavement, the pilot pulled pitch and the Black Hawk lifted away. Through the open door, Rachel watched Mercy General shrink below, the crowd of staff members still standing in the parking lot staring up. The building where she'd spent 3 months trying to be invisible. She'd never be invisible again. Preston settled into the seat across from her and pulled on his headset. That wasn't necessary, Rachel said. The speech, the public revelation, you could have just picked me up quietly. No, I couldn't. Because you've spent 2 years hiding who you are, diminishing yourself, accepting disrespect from people who aren't fit to carry your medkit. Someone needed to remind you what you're worth, and them. Rachel looked down at her hands. They were steady now, no tremor, no uncertainty. How much time until Kieran arrives? She asked. His flight diverted to Dover Air Force Base. Secure transfer from there to the VA hospital. ETA 45 minutes, which gives us time to set up and prepare. What's his condition? Preston pulled out a tablet and brought up medical data. 2 gunshot wounds to the lower abdomen. Entry wounds here and here. He indicated points on a diagram. The first round passed through without hitting major organs. Clean through and through. The second round fragmented. We've got shrapnel embedded near the abdominal aorta and possibly the inferior vena cava. The field medic stabilized him, got the bleeding under control, but the fragments need to come out before they shift. Rachel studied the imaging. This needs a surgeon, a vascular surgeon. I'm a medic commander. I can stabilize him, keep him alive, but if that shrapnel moves... We have a surgeon standing by, but Kieran won't let him operate until you clear it. He trusts you to assess the situation, to tell him whether it's safe or whether we need to risk a hospital transfer. And if I say it's not safe, if he needs a full surgical suite... Preston's expression was grim. Then we roll the dice and hope the people hunting him don't have assets at whatever hospital we choose. Rachel, I won't lie to you. There's no perfect solution here. Every option carries risk. But Kieran specifically asked for you because he knows you'll give him the truth. No politics, no bullshit. Just an honest assessment from someone he trusts. The helicopter banked north. Below the city gave way to older neighborhoods, industrial areas, and finally a sprawling complex of aged brick buildings surrounded by a rusted fence. The old VA hospital. It had been built in the 1950s, a sprawling campus designed to handle the influx of Korean War veterans. 3 main buildings connected by covered walkways. A parking lot with more weeds than asphalt. Windows dark and empty. But as the helicopter descended, Rachel saw movement. People emerging from the buildings. Not hospital staff. Veterans. Old men, most of them, but moving with purpose. The Black Hawk touched down in what had once been the emergency vehicle bay. The rotors wound down, and in the sudden quiet, Rachel could hear voices. Orders being called, equipment being moved. She stepped out of the helicopter. Colonel Whitmore was already there. He must have left the hospital immediately and driven straight here. He stood with 6 other men, all in their 60s and 70s, all watching her with expressions of recognition and respect. Preston made introductions quickly. Petty Officer Thorne, this is Colonel James Whitmore, United States Army Somalia veteran. Sergeant Thomas Beckett, Marine Scout, Sniper Somalia. Corporal Robert Flynn, Army Ranger Bosnia. Private First Class William Shaw, Army Somalia. Sergeant Daniel Brooks, Air Force Pararescue Somalia. Corporal Nathan Harper, Marines Bosnia. Each man nodded as his name was called. They were old, yes. Grey hair, weathered faces, the slight stiffness that came with age and old injuries. But their eyes were sharp, alert. These were men who'd seen combat and never quite left it behind. Gentlemen, Preston continued, this is Petty Officer Rachel Thorne, call sign Valkyrie, SEAL Team Combat Medic. She'll be primary medical on the patient we're bringing in. Whitmore stepped forward. We've prepared the old surgical suite on the 2nd floor. It's outdated, but the equipment still functions. We've scrounged what supplies we could. Brooks here was a PJ, so he's got medical training. We can assist however you need. Rachel looked at the building, at these old warriors who'd answered a call to help one more time. Thank you, she said simply. All of you. Flynn, the oldest at 70, grinned. Ma'am, we've been waiting 3 years for someone to need this place for something other than poker games and war stories. It's good to have a mission again. They showed her inside. The building was exactly as she'd imagined. Institutional green walls, linoleum floors cracked and yellowed with age. But someone had cleaned. The hallways were swept. The windows, though old, were clear. The surgical suite was on the 2nd floor, just as Whitmore had said. It was small, outdated, but functional. An operating table that looked like it belonged in a museum. Overhead lights that flickered slightly when turned on. But there were monitors pulled from storage and tested. There were instruments old but sterilized. There was an autoclave that still worked. Rachel set down her aid bag and began unpacking. Brooks joined her, his movements practiced despite his age. I was a PJ for 22 years, he said. Retired in 2005. My trauma skills are rusty, but I can assist. Follow orders. Keep my mouth shut when you're working. Rachel handed him packages of sterile supplies. I need you to set up IV lines. 2 bags of O negative if we have it. Lactated ringers if we don't. Pressure infusion bags ready. And I need someone watching vitals continuously once the patient arrives. I can do that, Whitmore said from the doorway. I'm not medical, but I can read a monitor and call out numbers. Rachel nodded. That works. What about security? Preston had followed them upstairs. We've got 2 SEALs on the roof with Overwatch. 2 more at the main entrance. The old vets are covering the other access points. This building has good sight lines and limited entry points. If someone comes for Kieran, we'll see them long before they get close. And if they come in force, Preston's expression hardened, then we hold them off long enough for you to stabilize Kieran and get him out. There's a secondary evac plan. But Rachel, if it comes to that, things have gone very wrong. She didn't answer, just continued prepping the surgical suite with methodical precision. 20 minutes later, Preston's radio crackled. Commander, we have incoming. Black SUV with federal plates. 2 occupants. One is matching description for FBI Assistant Director Morrison. The other is unknown. Preston swore softly. FBI. That's either very good or very bad. He headed downstairs. Rachel continued working, but she could hear voices rising from below. Angry voices, demanding voices. 5 minutes passed. Then Preston returned with 2 people. A woman in her 50s wearing a dark suit and carrying federal credentials. And behind her, on a stretcher carried by 2 SEALs, was Kieran Reeves. Rachel's breath caught. Kieran looked worse than the medical reports had suggested. His face was grey, drawn with pain. Sweat soaked through his hospital gown. Bandages covered his abdomen, seeping blood despite the pressure dressings. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Rachel, something like relief flooded his features. "Doc," he whispered. "Knew you'd come." Rachel moved to his side immediately, her hands already assessing. Checking pulse, checking pupils, checking the bandages. "I'm here, Kieran. You're going to be fine." The woman in the suit cleared her throat. "Petty Officer Thorne. I'm Assistant Director Sarah Morrison, FBI. I need to speak with you about the security protocols for this patient and the evidence he's carrying." Rachel didn't look up from Kieran. "Not now. I have a patient to stabilize. This is a matter of national security. So is keeping this operator alive. Give me 20 minutes. Morrison started to object, but Preston stepped between them. "Ma'am, with respect, Petty Officer Thorne is the medical authority here. You can debrief after she's done her job." Morrison's jaw tightened, but she nodded and stepped back. Rachel and Brooks transferred Kieran to the operating table. The old lights flickered on, bright and harsh. Rachel cut away the bandages, carefully exposing the wounds. 2 entry points, just as the reports had indicated. The first was clean through and through, already sutured in the field. The second was the problem. The entry wound was small, but the internal damage was unknown. "Kieran, I need to examine you. It's going to hurt." "Do what you need to do, Doc." Rachel's hands moved with practiced precision, palpating the abdomen, checking for rigidity, for rebound tenderness, for signs of internal bleeding that had been missed. Kieran hissed in pain but didn't cry out. "Vitals?" Rachel asked. Whitmore was watching the monitors. BP 90/60, heart rate 120, oxygen saturation 96%. Low blood pressure, elevated heart rate. Signs of compensation. Kieran's body was working overtime to maintain perfusion despite blood loss. Rachel pulled out a portable ultrasound from her aid bag, military-grade compact designed for field use. She squeezed gel onto Kieran's abdomen and ran the probe over his belly. The screen showed what she'd feared. Free fluid in the abdomen. Blood. Not a massive amount, but actively pooling. And there near the aorta, several bright spots that could only be shrapnel fragments. "Brooks, I need a central line, subclavian approach, and start pushing fluids. We need to maintain his pressure while I figure out how bad this is." Brooks moved immediately, his old training kicking in, despite his 65 years. Rachel continued the ultrasound examination, mapping the shrapnel locations in her mind. 3 fragments. One was superficial, embedded in muscle tissue, easy to remove. The second was deeper but not immediately threatening. The third was less than 2 millimeters from the abdominal aorta. If it shifted, if Kieran moved wrong, if his blood pressure spiked, that fragment could tear through the aortic wall and he'd bleed out in minutes. Rachel set down the ultrasound probe. "Kieran, I need you to listen to me very carefully." His eyes focused on her. "You have a fragment of shrapnel sitting right next to your aorta. It's stable right now, but if it moves, you're in serious trouble. I can remove the other fragments here. I can keep you stable. But that piece near the aorta that needs a vascular surgeon in a real OR with real equipment." Kieran's voice was hoarse. "How long do I have?" "If you stay absolutely still, and we're lucky days, maybe a week. If you move wrong or your pressure spikes, minutes." "And if we go to a hospital?" Preston stepped forward. "They'll find you, Kieran. We've already got reports of inquiries at 3 major hospitals in the region." "Someone's casting a wide net." Assistant Director Morrison spoke up. "We can provide protection, federal agents, security protocols." "With respect, ma'am," Preston said. "Someone accessed Kieran's medical records at a secure military facility in Germany. Someone with high-level clearance. If they can do that, they can compromise hospital security." Kieran closed his eyes. So I'm dead either way. Either the shrapnel kills me or they do. Rachel took his hand. It was cold, clammy with shock.
No, there's a third option. I stabilize you here, remove what I can safely remove, keep you immobile and monitored, and we buy time for Commander Preston and the FBI to identify who's after you and take them down. It's not ideal. It's risky. But Kieran, I've kept people alive in worse conditions than this. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw the memory in his eyes. Afghanistan. Marcus bleeding out.
Rachel fighting to save him, even as she knew it was hopeless.
You won't give up on me,
Kieran said. It wasn't a question.
Never. Not while I'm breathing.
He squeezed her hand weakly.
Then do what you need to do, Doc. I trust you.
Rachel nodded and turned to Brooks. We're going to do a limited exploratory. Remove the fragments I can reach safely. Repair any active bleeding. And then we keep him completely immobilized until we can arrange for proper vascular surgery under controlled conditions. She looked at Preston and Morrison. That means this location stays secure. No one in or out who isn't absolutely necessary. And you two need to find whoever's hunting him before that shrapnel shifts. Morrison nodded.
We're already working several leads. The evidence Kieran's carrying implicates over 40 people in the defense fraud network. We've started making arrests. Quietly. But the higher-level targets are getting nervous. That's probably why they're desperate to stop him from testifying.
How long until you can take down the whole network?
Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky.
Rachel looked at the ultrasound screen again, at the bright fragment nestled against Kieran's aorta like a ticking bomb.
Then that's how long I need to keep him alive. 1 week.
She turned back to Kieran and began scrubbing her hands in the ancient sink. The water ran clear and cold. Brooks helped her into surgical gloves.
Whitmore, I need you on vitals. Call out any changes immediately. Brooks, you're assisting. Everyone else out. I need this space clear.
Preston Morrison and the other veterans filed out.
The door closed, leaving Rachel, Brooks, Whitmore and Kieran in the flickering fluorescent light of a surgical suite that should have been condemned years ago. Rachel picked up a scalpel. Kieran, you're going to feel pressure but not pain. Brooks is going to manage your sedation. If anything hurts you, tell me immediately. Understood? Understood, Doc. Rachel made the first incision. Blood welled up and she irrigated it away with saline. Her hands moved with absolute certainty.
This she knew. This she understood. Combat medicine in improvised conditions with inadequate equipment and lives hanging in the balance. This was what Valkyrie had been born to do. 2 hours later, Rachel stepped back from the table. Kieran was stable. She'd removed 2 of the 3 shrapnel fragments, repaired a small laceration to his small intestine, irrigated the abdominal cavity, and closed him back up with careful sutures. The 3rd fragment remained, sitting next to his aorta, waiting.
But Kieran was alive. His vitals were stable. His color was better. Rachel pulled off her gloves and mask. Brooks was grinning.
Mom, that was the best field surgery I've seen in 40 years.
Whitmore was staring at the monitors like they held the secrets of the universe. His blood pressure's coming up. Heart rate's dropping to normal. Whatever you did, it worked. Rachel allowed herself a small smile. It worked for now, but we're not out of the woods yet.
That remaining fragment is still a problem. She stepped out into the hallway. Preston was waiting.
How is he? Stable, but I need him completely immobile for at least 72 hours. No moving, no stress, constant monitoring. After that, if the fragment hasn't shifted, we might have options.
Preston nodded. We can do that. The team is settling in for a long-term security operation, and Morrison says the FBI is moving fast on the arrests.
Rachel leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind bone-deep fatigue. Commander, who leaked Marcus's position that day. You said you had suspicions. Preston's expression darkened. We don't have proof yet, but there's a name that keeps coming up in the investigation. A former SEAL who went private sector after being forced out for ethics violations. He's now a senior vice president at Meridian Defense Solutions.
One of the companies implicated in the fraud.
Name?
Maxwell Stone. Rachel went very still. Stone. I know that name. He was with Team 8 before I arrived, dishonorably discharged in 2015. That's him. And Rachel Meridian Defense Solutions had contracts in Afghanistan during the time Marcus was killed. Stone had access to operational intelligence through his company's liaisons with JSOC. The pieces were falling into place, a network of corruption.
A SEAL-turned-contractor who'd sold out his brothers for money. Marcus's death wasn't just bad luck or bad intelligence. It was murder. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. Does Kieran know?
We briefed him before he deployed to Syria. It's part of why he was so determined to bring back that evidence. He wanted justice for Marcus, for all the operators who died because someone sold them out for profit. Rachel looked through the window at Kieran unconscious on the operating table. A young man willing to risk everything to expose the truth. Then we keep him alive, she said quietly. No matter what it takes, we keep him alive long enough to testify, to take down Stone and everyone else involved. Agreed. Preston's radio crackled. Commander, we have movement. 3 vehicles approaching from the south. Dark SUVs, no government plates. They're slowing down near our perimeter. Preston's hand went to his sidearm. How many occupants? Estimate 12 to 15 individuals. They're conducting surveillance. Looks like a recon pass. Rachel felt her heart rate increase. They'd been found, already. Preston was on the radio immediately. All positions weapons tight. Do not engage unless they breach the perimeter. I want eyes on them at all times. He looked at Rachel. We knew this was coming. The question is whether they'll hit us now or wait for a better opportunity. What's the evac plan? We have a backup location 20 miles north, another old facility, but moving Kieran in his condition is risky. Moving him with a firefight happening around him is riskier. The radio crackled again. Commander, vehicles are leaving, heading back south. They were definitely conducting reconnaissance. Preston exhaled slowly. They know we're here. They're probably planning an assault. We need to be ready. Rachel looked at the old veterans gathered in the hallway. At Brooks 65, at Whitmore 67, at Flynn 70, old men who'd volunteered to stand one more watch. How long can we hold them? She asked. Whitmore answered. Ma'am, we might be old, but we've got experience. We've got good defensive positions, and we've got motivation. Long enough for you to do your job, we'll hold them. Rachel nodded. Then I need to prepare for the worst. If we come under attack, Kieran needs to be ready to move immediately. Brooks helped me set up a portable monitoring system. Something we can take with us if we have to run. They worked through the afternoon preparing, setting up fallback positions, stockpiling supplies, running through evacuation scenarios. As the sun set, casting long shadows through the old hospital's windows, Rachel sat beside Kieran's bed. He was awake now, groggy from the sedation, but aware. Doc, he whispered. They're coming, aren't they? Probably. I'm sorry, I brought this on you, on all of you. Rachel shook her head. No, you did your job. You got the evidence. You survived against impossible odds. What's happening now that's on them, not you? Kieran's eyes drifted to the window. Marcus would have liked this. One last mission, taking down the people who got him killed. Marcus would have told you to stop being dramatic and focus on healing. That got a weak smile. Yeah, he would have. Rachel stood. Get some rest. You're going to need your strength. She walked to the window and looked out at the darkening city. Somewhere out there, people were planning to kill them. To silence Kieran and destroy the evidence. To protect their empire of fraud and corruption. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated the quiet nurse who'd spent 2 years hiding what she really was. Valkyrie wasn't hiding anymore, and she was done running. The old Via hospital settled into darkness like a fortress preparing for siege. Rachel moved through the second-floor corridor, checking on defensive positions that old warriors had established with the kind of quiet competence that came from decades of experience. Sergeant Thomas Beckett had taken position in the northeast corner room, his ancient M14 rifle propped against the window frame. At 69, his eyes weren't what they used to be, but Rachel watched him sight down the scope with movements so smooth they looked like meditation. 800 yards of clear sight line, he said without looking at her. Anyone approaches from that direction, I'll know before they're within rifle range. Rachel nodded. Rules of engagement. Commander Preston was clear. No shots unless they breach the perimeter with hostile intent. But ma'am, if shooting starts, I won't miss. She believed him. Corporal Robert Flynn had set up in the old pharmacy on the first floor. At 70, he was the oldest of the group, but he'd turned the room into a choke point nightmare. Overturned metal shelving created barriers. A fire extinguisher sat within easy reach. He'd even found an old crash cart and positioned it to block the secondary entrance. They'll have to come through here to reach the stairs, Flynn explained, his weathered hands checking his shotgun for the 3rd time. Narrow corridor, limited visibility, only one approach angle. I can hold this position against a dozen men if I have to. Let's hope you don't have to. Flynn smiled grimly. Ma'am, I've been hoping I wouldn't have to fight since 1995. But hope doesn't keep you alive. Preparation does. The 2 SEALs on the roof, Petty Officers Davis and Martinez had night vision equipment and suppressed rifles. They'd created a hide site behind the old HVAC units that gave them overlapping fields of fire covering all approaches. Preston had positioned his remaining 4 SEALs at critical points, 2 at the main entrance, 2 in the stairwells. The old veterans filled the gaps, creating a defensive network that looked improvised but was anything but. Rachel returned to the surgical suite where Kieran rested. Brooks sat in a chair beside the bed, monitoring vitals with the focused attention of a man who'd spent 2 decades keeping wounded operators alive. "How is he?" Rachel asked quietly. "Stable. Blood pressure's holding at 95/65. Heart rate's down to 90. The sedation's keeping him comfortable, but he's aware enough to respond if we need him to." Rachel checked the monitors herself. The numbers were good. Better than good, considering what Kieran had been through. But that fragment of shrapnel was still there, nestled against his aorta, a ticking bomb that could go off at any moment. She pulled up the ultrasound again and took another look. The fragment hadn't moved. Small mercies. Kieran's eyes fluttered open. "Doc, right here. How long was I out?" 3 hours. You needed the rest." He tried to shift and immediately winced. Rachel's hand was on his shoulder instantly. "Don't move. That fragment is still in there, and any sudden motion could be catastrophic." Kieran settled back, breathing carefully. "Are they coming?" Rachel saw no point in lying. "Yes. We had reconnaissance vehicles earlier. They know we're here." "Then you should evacuate. Get everyone out. I'm not worth—" "Stop!" Rachel's voice was sharp enough to cut. "You're carrying evidence that will take down a corrupt network that's been operating for over a decade. You're worth exactly as much as justice for every operator who died because of leaked intelligence and fraudulent contracts, including Marcus." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Commander Preston told you about Stone." "He did." "Maxwell Stone was on my team briefly, before he got kicked out. He was always about the money. Always had an angle. When I found out he might be connected to what happened to Marcus, I volunteered for this operation. I wanted to be the one to bring him down." Rachel pulled up a chair and sat. "Tell me about the evidence." Kieran's hand moved to touch his chest where his tactical vest would normally be. Brooks had removed it during surgery, but it sat on a nearby table, the encrypted drive still embedded in its lining. "Financial records, emails, recorded phone calls. Meridian Defense Solutions has been billing the Department of Defense for equipment and services never delivered. Ghost contracts, phantom employees. They'd create fake companies, submit bids, win contracts through bribery and kickbacks, then pocket the money while troops went without gear they needed. $2.8 billion. That we can prove. The real number is probably double that, and Stone's at the center of it. He used his SEAL connections to identify vulnerable supply chains, operations where equipment shortages could be explained away as enemy action. He'd leak operational intelligence to insurgents, create chaos, then blame missing supplies on the attacks." Rachel felt cold rage settling in her chest. He got people killed to cover fraud. Dozens, maybe hundreds over the years. Marcus was just one. There was an operation in Iraq in 2017. A platoon of Rangers got ambushed because their night vision equipment never arrived. 6 KIA. The gear had been paid for. Meridian billed for it, but it never existed. Stone knew they'd be going in blind, and he leaked their position to make sure there were no survivors to report the equipment shortage. Brooks, listening from his chair, swore softly. "The Syria operation," Rachel said. "What happened there?" "We were extracting a source. Someone inside Meridian who'd been feeding information to military investigators. The source had documents, physical evidence that couldn't be encrypted or hidden. When we went in to get him, the safe house was already compromised. Insurgents were waiting. It was another setup. But you got out." "Barely. Lost 2 men. The source didn't make it. But he'd already passed me a backup drive before the shooting started. That drive is what's in my vest. And it's enough to bring down not just Stone, but 40 other people in the network. Defense contractors, Pentagon officials, congressional staffers who took bribes to push contracts through." Rachel looked at the encrypted drive. Such a small thing, no bigger than her thumb, but worth killing for, worth dying for. "Stone knows you have it. He was one of the first people notified when I was wounded, part of the contractor liaison network. He knows I'm alive, knows I have the evidence, and knows I'm the only link in the chain he can still break." Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Movement. South perimeter. Multiple vehicles. She stood immediately. "Brooks, stay with him. Don't let him move for any reason." She ran to the south-facing windows. Preston was already there with binoculars, watching 3 black SUVs parked 2 blocks away. 12 men, Preston said quietly. "Professional movement, military bearing.
They're gearing up for an assault. Rachel counted the figures moving between vehicles. Body armor, long guns, coordinated hand signals. Contractors, she said. Probably Meridian personnel. That's my read too.
Stones people. They won't announce themselves or try to negotiate. They'll breach fast and hard. How long do we have? 20 minutes, maybe 30. They're conducting final reconnaissance now, identifying our defensive positions. Rachel's mind raced through options. They couldn't evacuate Kieran not safely. Moving him could dislodge the shrapnel, but staying meant fighting, and fighting meant putting the old veterans at risk. Commander, the men downstairs. Whitmore, Flynn, the others. They're in their 60s and 70s. This isn't their fight.
Preston lowered the binoculars and looked at her. Did you tell them that? I'm telling you. Rachel, I offered them the chance to leave. 3 times. You know what Whitmore said? He said he's been waiting 3 years for someone to need this hospital for something important, for a mission that mattered. These men are warriors.
They've been civilians for decades, but they never stopped being warriors. Don't take this away from them.
Rachel wanted to argue, but she understood. She'd spent 2 years as a civilian trying to be someone else, and it had nearly destroyed her. These men had spent decades in that same limbo, and now they had a chance to stand watch one more time.
All right, she said quietly, but I want them briefed on what they're facing. No surprises. Preston keyed his radio.
All positions, this is command. Enemy force approaching from south. Estimate 12 hostiles, professional contractors expect coordinated assault. Rules of engagement are weapons tight until they breach the perimeter. Once they commit hostile action, you are cleared to engage. Conserve ammunition, make your shots count. And gentlemen, thank you for standing with us tonight. Responses came back calm and professional. Roger that, command. Northeast position ready. First floor secure.
Waiting on targets. Roof team has eyes on. We'll call out movement. Rachel returned to Kieran's room. His eyes were open, tracking her movement.
It's happening, isn't it? Yes. I should be fighting. I should be. You should be staying absolutely still so that shrapnel doesn't sever your aorta and kill you in 90 seconds. Rachel checked his IV lines, adjusted his monitors. Your job right now is to survive. Let us handle the rest.
Assistant Director Morrison appeared in the doorway. She'd been making calls for the past 3 hours, coordinating with FBI field offices. Petty Officer Thorne, I have teams mobilizing, but they're 40 minutes out. Can you hold that long? Rachel looked at the woman, at her expensive suit and her federal credentials and her world where everything operated through proper channels and bureaucratic procedures. Ma'am, I've held positions in Afghanistan with half this many people and worse equipment. We'll hold. Morrison nodded and stepped back. Rachel saw uncertainty in her eyes, the realization that paperwork and procedure couldn't stop what was coming. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Rachel prepared an emergency evacuation kit. If they had to move Kieran under fire, she needed everything ready. Portable monitors, IV bags, medications, a backboard to keep him immobile. Brooks helped without being asked, his movements economical and practiced. How many firefights have you been in? Rachel asked. In my career, 43, give or take. Lost count after Somalia. He secured the last strap on the evacuation pack. But Ma'am, I'll be honest. It's been 20 years since my last one. I'm not as fast as I used to be. You don't need to be fast. You need to be steady. And from what I've seen, steady is what you do best. The roof team's voice crackled over the radio. Command targets are moving, splitting into 3 groups. 4 men approaching main entrance, 4 moving to east side, 4 circling to the west. Preston's voice was calm. Copy. All positions maintain fire discipline. Let them commit. Rachel moved to the window. In the darkness below, she could see movement, shadows flowing between buildings. Professional, coordinated. These weren't amateurs. The first gunshot shattered the night. Not from inside the hospital. From outside, a single suppressed shot that sparked off the metal doorframe at the main entrance. Then all hell broke loose. The contractors opened fire on multiple positions simultaneously. Automatic weapons fire raked the hospital's facade. Windows shattered. Bullets punched through old brick and plaster. The 2 SEALs at the main entrance returned fire immediately. Controlled bursts, precise. Rachel heard someone scream outside. From the northeast corner, Beckett's M14 boomed. Once, twice, the heavy rifle rounds crashed through the night. Target down! Beckett's voice came over the radio. Calm, professional. East approach 1, hostile eliminated. The contractors tried to breach the east entrance. Flynn was waiting. Rachel heard the distinctive boom of his shotgun. Once, twice, 3 times, then shouting. Men retreating. East entrance holding, Flynn reported. 2 hostiles wounded withdrew under fire. But the west side was the problem. 4 contractors had made it to a side door that the defenders hadn't fully secured. Rachel heard the door breach, heard boots pounding on stairs. Preston was moving before the report came through. West stairwell compromised. Martinez Davis repositioned to support. Rachel grabbed her sidearm from her aid bag, a Sig Sauer P226 that she'd carried through 4 deployments. She'd fired it in anger more times than she wanted to remember.
Brooks, lock this door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Preston. If someone tries to breach you, shoot through the door.
Understood. Brooks already had his pistol out.
Yes, ma'am.
Rachel ran into the corridor. The west stairwell was at the far end. She could hear gunfire echoing up from below, the sharp crack of rifle fire, the deeper boom of a shotgun, men shouting. She reached the stairwell door just as it exploded inward. A contractor came through, fast weapon up, scanning for targets. Rachel put 2 rounds center mass before he could acquire her. He went down hard, another one behind him. Rachel fired twice more. He stumbled back, hit, but not down, returning fire wildly. Rounds sparked off the metal doorframe beside her head. Then Preston was there, his rifle speaking in controlled bursts. The contractor went down and didn't move. "How many?" Rachel asked. "At least 2 more in the stairwell." They could hear boots on the stairs. "Coming up." Rachel pulled a flashbang from Preston's tactical vest without asking, yanked the pin, and tossed it down the stairwell. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. Immediately they heard screaming, disoriented men stumbling. Preston went down the stairs like death incarnate. Rachel followed, weapon up, covering his blind spots. They found one contractor on the landing, hands over his ears, trying to clear his vision. Preston zip-tied him and kept moving. The second one had retreated back to the first floor. They heard the west exit door slam.
West stairwell clear,
Preston reported over radio.
2 hostiles down, 1 detained.
The gunfire outside was dying down. Rachel and Preston returned to the second floor. Through the windows they could see the contractors retreating to their vehicles. Beckett's rifle boomed twice more.
"That's for discouragement,"
the old sniper said over the radio. The SUVs burned rubber, pulling away. In less than 3 minutes, the attack had started and ended. The hospital fell silent, except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Rachel ran back to Kieran's room. Brooks had the door barricaded with a supply cart, his pistol aimed at the entrance. "It's me," Rachel called. "Stand down." Brooks lowered his weapon and moved the cart. Rachel checked Kieran immediately. His vitals were elevated, heart rate at 120, blood pressure spiking, but he was intact. "The shrapnel?" she asked. Brooks checked the ultrasound. "Still in position. Didn't shift." Rachel exhaled in relief. "Kieran, you okay?" He was pale, sweating, but managed a weak smile. "I've had worse commutes." Preston's voice came over the radio. "All positions sound off." One by one the defenders reported in. Everyone was alive. Minor injuries only. Beckett had caught shrapnel from a ricochet in his arm, but said it was nothing. Flynn had twisted his ankle diving for cover, but could still walk. They'd held. Against a professional assault by contractors with military training and superior numbers, a handful of old veterans and a few SEALs had held a decrepit hospital. Rachel helped Brooks treat the wounded. Beckett's arm wound was superficial. Flynn's ankle was sprained but stable. One of the SEALs had taken a round to his body armor that left him with cracked ribs, but nothing life-threatening. The detained contractor was secured in a basement room. Preston and Morrison were interrogating him, though Rachel doubted he'd talk. Men like that were paid for loyalty and silence. As dawn began to grey the eastern sky, Whitmore found Rachel on the second-floor balcony. She was watching the street weapon still in hand, waiting for the second assault that logic said had to be coming. "They won't come back," Whitmore said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because we hurt them. They came in thinking they'd overwhelm a bunch of old men and a few SEALs in 30 seconds. Instead, they lost at least 3 men with several more wounded. They'll regroup, reassess, try a different approach." Rachel lowered her weapon. "You did well tonight, Colonel."
"So did you, young lady. Though I suspect this isn't your first time defending a position against superior numbers." "No, sir, it's not." They stood in silence, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere out there, Maxwell Stone was getting reports that his assault had failed, that Kieran was still alive, that the evidence was still intact, and he was running out of options. Preston found them 30 minutes later. His face was grim. "The prisoner isn't talking, but Morrison ran his prints. His name is Derek Walsh, former Marine, discharged 2019, now employed by Meridian Defense Solutions." No surprise there. "Any word from the FBI teams?" "They went to arrest Stone 2 hours ago. His house is empty. His car is missing.
He cleared out the moment the assault failed. Rachel felt ice in her stomach. He's running. Or he's coming himself. A man like Stone, former SEAL, he's not going to trust contractors to finish this. Not after they failed. If he wants Kieran dead, he'll do it personally. Then we need to move Kieran. Now. Get him to a secure facility before... Before what? Preston interrupted. Before Stone finds us. Rachel, he already knows where we are. Moving Kieran in his condition with that shrapnel still in place could kill him just as surely as a bullet. And there's no guarantee the next location won't be compromised too. Rachel wanted to argue, but he was right. They were caught between equally lethal options. Morrison appeared, phone to her ear, her expression urgent. She ended the call and turned to them. Stone just accessed a secure DoD network using old credentials that should have been revoked years ago. He pulled Kieran's current medical status, our defensive positions, and the identities of everyone in this building. How is that possible? Preston demanded. His access should have been terminated when he was discharged.
It should have been, but someone maintained his backdoor access. Someone high up who wanted to keep him as an asset.
Morrison's jaw was tight. We're dealing with a conspiracy that goes deeper than we thought. Rachel looked at Preston. He's coming, and he knows exactly how to get to us. They had perhaps hours, maybe less. Rachel returned to Kieran's room. He was awake, watching her with eyes that had seen too much.
Stone's coming, isn't he?
Yes. Good. Kieran's voice was hard. I want to face him. I want him to see me alive before he goes to prison. Kieran, you can barely move. That shrapnel. I know, Doc. Believe me, I know. Every breath I take, I feel it. But I've been running from this for too long. Ever since Marcus died, I've wanted justice. Now we're so close, I'm not backing down. Rachel understood. She'd spent 2 years running from her own demons. From the memory of Marcus dying in her arms. From the guilt of surviving when he didn't. Maybe it was time to stop running. She pulled up a chair beside his bed. Tell me about Marcus, she said quietly. Tell me about that last day. Kieran was silent for a long moment. Then he began to speak. The operation was supposed to be simple. Extract a high-value informant from a compound in Helmand Province. Intelligence said the compound was lightly defended. We'd go in fast, grab the asset, and be out before the enemy could respond. But the intelligence was wrong. Not wrong. Deliberately falsified. Stone had access to the operational planning through his company's DoD contracts. He knew we were coming. He knew our route, our timing, everything, and he told the enemy exactly where to wait. Rachel's hands clenched. Go on. We hit the compound at 0300. Everything seemed normal at first, but when we breached the main building, they were ready. RPGs, heavy machine guns. It was a kill box. They'd turned the entire compound into a trap. Kieran's voice cracked slightly. Marcus was on point. He took the first RPG blast. I was right behind him. The explosion threw us both. When I came to Marcus was on the ground, arterial bleed from his neck. You were already there working on him, covered in his blood, trying to save him. Rachel's eyes burned. She remembered. God, she remembered every detail. I tried, she whispered. I tried everything. I know. I saw you. You didn't give up even when it was obvious he was gone.
You kept fighting for him until there was nothing left to fight for, and then you helped us carry him out. You wouldn't let anyone else touch him. You carried your brother home. Tears slid down Rachel's face. She didn't wipe them away. He was 24 years old. Yeah, same age I am now. And Doc, every day since then, I've carried the guilt of surviving when he didn't, of being right behind him close enough that it could have been me instead. Should have been me. Rachel looked up sharply. Don't you dare feel guilty for surviving. Marcus wouldn't want that. He'd want you to live, to fight, to make sure the people who killed him face justice. That's why I volunteered for Syria, why I took this mission even though I knew it was dangerous. Because Stone was responsible for Marcus's death, and I wanted to be the one to take him down. Rachel reached out and took his hand. Then we finish this. Together. For Marcus. Kieran squeezed her hand weakly. For Marcus. The day passed in tense preparation. The old veterans maintained their positions, rotating watches, staying alert. The SEALs reinforced defensive positions and planned fallback routes. Rachel kept Kieran stable, monitoring that cursed fragment of shrapnel. As afternoon faded to evening, Preston gathered everyone in the main hall. I won't lie to you, Preston said. Maxwell Stone is coming. He's a former SEAL team operator with 15 years of combat experience. He's smart, trained, and desperate. When he attacks, it won't be like last night. It won't be a frontal assault by contractors. Stone will be personal, precise, lethal. Whitmore stepped forward. Commander, with respect, we knew what we were signing up for. Every man here has faced death before. We're not afraid of one more fight. The other veterans nodded. There's something else, Morrison added.
The FBI has arrested 47 people in the last 12 hours. The network is collapsing. Stone knows this is over. He knows he's going to prison for the rest of his life, which makes him more dangerous, not less. He has nothing left to lose. Rachel spoke up. How long until Stone gets here? Unknown. But he was last seen 4 hours ago, heading this direction. As if on cue, Preston's radio crackled. The roof team's voice was urgent.
Command, we have a single vehicle approaching.
Black sedan. 1 occupant. Male. Parking 2 blocks south. Everyone went silent.
Can you get a visual on the driver? Preston asked. Stand by. Affirmative. White male, approximately 45 years old, military bearing. He's exiting the vehicle. No visible weapons, but I guarantee he's carrying. Preston looked at Rachel. That's him. Stone's here.
Rachel's heart rate spiked. This was it. The man who'd killed Marcus. The man who'd tried to kill Kieran. The man responsible for so much death and corruption. And he was walking toward them alone. This doesn't make sense, Morrison said. Why would he come alone? Where's his backup? Rachel understood. He doesn't need backup. He's a SEAL. He's trained to operate alone in hostile territory. And he knows this building, knows our defensive positions. He pulled them from the DoD network. Preston keyed his radio. All positions single hostile approaching, likely highly trained.
Weapons tight until he commits hostile action. Do not underestimate him.
Rachel ran to the window. In the fading light, she could see a figure walking down the street, casual, unhurried, like a man out for an evening stroll. Maxwell Stone. He was tall, well-built, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd walked into worse situations and walked out alive. He wore jeans and a leather jacket. His hands were empty and visible. But Rachel knew what he was. A predator. A killer.
A traitor.
Stone stopped in the middle of the street 50 yards from the hospital entrance. He looked up at the building, scanning the windows. Then he spoke. His voice carried clearly in the evening air. Commander Preston, I know you're in there. I know you have Kieran Reeves, and I know what he's carrying. Stone's voice was calm, reasonable. I'm here to make you an offer. A trade. Reeves and the evidence for everyone else. You let me walk in, take what I came for, and walk out.
Nobody else has to die.
Preston appeared at a ground floor window.
Stone, you're under federal indictment. There's no deal here. Surrender yourself.
Stone laughed.
Commander, I'm looking at life in military prison. That's not safety. That's a death sentence. No, I'm going to make this very simple. You have something I need. I'm willing to kill everyone in that building to get it. Or you can hand it over and live. Not happening. Stone's expression hardened. Then I'm coming in. And Commander, I trained half the men you have in there. I know how SEALs think, how they move, how they fight. You can't stop me. He started walking toward the building. Preston raised his rifle. Stone, stand down. This is your final warning. Stone kept walking. You won't shoot me, Commander. Not while I'm unarmed. Not in front of witnesses. That's not how we operate. We follow rules, laws, procedures. He smiled coldly. That's always been our weakness. He was 20 yards from the entrance. 10 yards. Stone reached the door and pushed it open. He stepped inside, and the trap snapped closed. The lobby exploded with flashbangs, 3 of them positioned and triggered remotely. The blinding light and deafening noise would have incapacitated anyone. But when the smoke cleared, Stone was gone. He'd anticipated the trap and moved the instant the flashbangs detonated. Now he was somewhere in the building, armed, hunting. Preston's voice was urgent. All positions hostile is inside. Repeat hostile inside. Assume he's armed and extremely dangerous. Maintain defensive positions. Do not pursue alone.
Rachel ran back to Kieran's room. Brooks had already moved to the door, weapon ready. He's inside, Rachel said. I heard. They barricaded the door. Waited. The hospital had gone eerily quiet. No gunfire, no shouting, just silence. Stone was out there moving through the building like a ghost.
Minutes passed like hours.
Rachel kept her weapon trained on the door. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it. A scrape of metal on metal, coming from above, the ceiling. Rachel looked up just as a panel exploded downward. Stone dropped through landing in a crouch, a suppressed pistol already in his hand. He fired twice at Brooks. The old PJ went down, hit in the shoulder, blood spreading across his shirt. Rachel dove to the side, returning fire. Her rounds sparked off metal cabinets where Stone had taken cover. They exchanged fire for 3 seconds that felt like eternity. Then Stone was moving again, using equipment as cover, advancing on Kieran's bed. Rachel stepped between them. You want him? You go through me. Stone paused, studied her face. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Valkyrie, I heard you'd retired after Holloway died. Heard you couldn't handle losing him. He kept his weapon trained on her.
Guilt's a terrible thing, isn't it?
You killed Marcus. Marcus died because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Acceptable losses for a much larger operation. Rachel's trigger finger tightened. He trusted you. His team trusted you, and you sold them out for money. I sold them out for survival. Stone's voice was cold. The military chews people up and spits them out. I found a way to make the system work for me instead of against me.
Marcus was just unfortunate collateral damage. He was 24 years old. He had a family, a future. He had a funeral. That's all any of us really get in the end. Stone shifted his aim. Now step aside. I'm taking Reeves and the evidence. You can shoot me, but at this range I'll still get a round off. We'll both die here. Is that really what you want? Rachel didn't move. Her weapon stayed locked on Stone's center mass. There's a third option, she said quietly.
What's that? You surrender, face trial, maybe testify against the others. The court might show mercy. Stone actually laughed. Mercy? From a military tribunal? For a traitor who got American operators killed? He shook his head. No. I'm walking out of here with what I came for, or we all die. Those are the only options. Behind Stone, Rachel saw movement. Brooks, wounded but conscious, was slowly reaching for his dropped pistol. She needed to keep Stone talking. Keep his attention forward. Marcus's last words were about you, Rachel said. Did you know that... Stone's expression flickered. I doubt that. He said, not your fault, Doc. He knew the ambush was a setup. Knew someone had betrayed the team. He died trying to protect us from realizing the truth too soon. Marcus was always too trusting. That's what got him killed. No. Your greed got him killed. Your cowardice. Your complete lack of honor. Stone's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance, Valkyrie. Step aside or... The door exploded inward. Preston came through with two SEALs' weapons-up voices shouting commands. Stone spun, trying to acquire multiple targets simultaneously. Rachel fired first. Her round caught Stone in the right shoulder, spinning him. His return shot went wide, shattering a monitor. Preston's 3-round burst hit Stone's chest. The body armor stopped penetration, but the kinetic impact drove him backward into equipment. Stone tried to raise his weapon. Martinez kicked it away, the pistol skittering across the floor. Davis had his knee in Stone's back, zip-tying his hands, while Preston kept a rifle inches from his skull. Stone fought for 3 seconds, then went still, breathing hard blood seeping from his shoulder. "Clear!" Davis called out. It was over. Preston kept his weapon trained while Davis and Martinez searched him. They found 2 backup magazines, a combat knife, and an encrypted phone. Rachel moved to Brooks immediately. The shoulder wound was bleeding, but not arterial, clean through and through. "You okay?" she asked. Brooks managed a pained smile. "I've had worse in Somalia." She got him into a chair and started treating the wound. Behind her, Stone was being hauled to his feet. He looked at Rachel, blood running down his arm, zip ties cutting into his wrists. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," he said quietly. Rachel didn't look up from Brooks's wound. "No, you're going to stand trial. You're going to face every family member of every operator who died because of your betrayal. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison knowing that you failed, knowing that we stopped you, knowing that Marcus's death wasn't in vain." Stone's expression twisted with rage and despair. "This changes nothing. The corruption goes deeper than you know." "Maybe," Rachel said finally, looking at him. "But not today. Today we stopped you. We saved Kieran. We secured the evidence. That's not nothing. That's justice." FBI agents arrived, led by Morrison. They read Stone his rights. Stone remained silent, staring at nothing. As they led him away, Kieran called out, "Stone." The former SEAL stopped, turned. Kieran's voice was weak but clear. "Marcus forgave you. Right before he died, he said he forgave whoever set us up." Kieran paused. "I don't forgive you. I hope you rot." Stone's face showed nothing. They took him away. 3 days later, a military surgical team operated on Kieran at Walter Reed Medical Center under heavy federal protection. Rachel stood in the observation gallery, watching them extract the final fragment of shrapnel from beside his aorta. The procedure took 4 hours. When the surgeon finally held up the small piece of metal with forceps, Rachel felt tension release. Kieran would make a full recovery.
2 weeks later, Maxwell Stone's court-martial began. Rachel attended every day. She sat with families of operators who died because of compromised operations. She listened to prosecutors detail 15 years of fraud and betrayal. She watched evidence mount. Kieran testified from a wheelchair, his voice strong. He walked the court through everything, named names.